Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, is recognized for any questions he may have for the panel.
I thank the chairman. Mr. Tiffany, am I correct with respect to what we're discussing right now, which was a resolution regarding the governor of New Mexico's unconstitutional deprivation of individuals' Second Amendment rights with respect to an emergency order? Am I correct that the New Mexico Attorney General, Raul Torres, a Democrat, stated he will not defend the emergency order? Are you familiar with that? I think I have indication that from my quote, from my perspective, is an inappropriate application of the Public Health Emergency Act to use that power, which is pretty extraordinary, but also very narrowly limited to public health emergencies, to extend that to try and cover an outright ban on the carrying of weapons is, in my judgment, unconstitutional. Does that sound right, that the Attorney General of New Mexico took that position?
That is correct. He went on to say only responsible gun owners are likely to abide by the ban.
Is it also correct that the Bernalillo County Sheriff John Allen, also a Democrat, announced that his department would not enforce the governor's 30-day ban, arguing that it violates the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution? Is that correct?
That is correct, and he went on to say this ban does nothing to curb gun violence.
Is it also correct that United States Senator Martin Heinrich, Democrat from New Mexico, issued a statement that said gun violence is a problem, but said that governor's executive order is an unworkable solution that won't save lives?
You know, I haven't seen his quote, but if he believes in the Constitution, I could see him saying that.
Is it also correct that the relatively left-leaning gun rights activist David Hogg said, quote, "I support gun safety, but there's no such thing as a state public health emergency exception to the U.S. Constitution"?
That is
quote.
correct.
Do you share the concern by these individuals, regardless of their political spectrum, wherever they fall, that the United States Constitution is deserving of support, and that it would be important for the United States House of Representatives to speak out in defense of the constitutional rights being violated by a governor of one of the 50 states of the Union?
Yes, and I'm glad some Democrats around the country are expressing their disagreement with the governor's executive order.
On a separate point, and I don't have a lot more to add beyond that which my friend from Kentucky articulated very well, but at the core of the issue, and there's some back and forth on this about guns and taking guns and so forth. If you are, for example, hypothetically speaking, a resident of the state of Texas whose house is maybe 120, 150 miles from the border, and if you are, hypothetically speaking, dealing with constant cars that are running through ranches and taking down fences and gotaways, and you're having people's homes getting broken into, and you're having crime that you're having to deal with, when you're dealing with district attorneys in cities like San Antonio and Austin and cities throughout the country where district attorneys are no longer enforcing laws, like, for example, the gentleman who, I use the word gentleman inappropriately here, the man who committed crimes, burglaries, and was let out by a judge with effectively no bail, and then came out and killed, or I'm sorry, shot and wounded a San Antonio police officer just a couple of weeks ago. Myriad cases like this, increased crime rates, even with some declines in the last year or two from the spikes during COVID, still significantly higher than 2019 pre-COVID, that to the extent that you've got significant cartel operations in South Texas and a continued influx of individuals that we don't even know who they are because of the known gotaways, because of an open border and continue to endanger the United States. The individual in Pennsylvania who escaped from prison after stabbing his girlfriend 28 times in this country, coming here illegally. The young man who was killed on a bus because someone got away and was driving and ran into a school bus on the first day of school, and this 11-year-old boy died in Ohio. The young man who was a supposed unaccompanied alien child was taken in by a father and the father was stabbed and killed in Florida. I could go on with the crime issues that we're dealing with. When you're removing the ability of law enforcement, for example, in Austin, Texas, or for example, in other states, I'm sure you've had similar situations in Wisconsin, where $150 million is cut from a police department's budget, and the police are no longer able to respond to 911 on a timely basis because of radical leftists running cities. In what universe is it appropriate for the government, in any way, shape, or form, much less by an executive action by a governor unconstitutionally using emergency powers, to undermine the ability of an American citizen to defend him or herself?
I believe it may be inadvertent on our friends across from the aisle, but they are the #1 gun salesmen in the United States of America. And this has been going on now for a couple decades. People will arm themselves. And when you look at the number of women who have chosen to get concealed carry permits and to buy guns, it is skyrocketing, and it's because they do not feel safe.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to, if I may, just close with a couple, 3 comments. Your colleague on this dais said we were attacking New Mexico. No, that's not it at all. We're rebuking the governor for trying to deny people their Second Amendment rights. This isn't against the people of the state of New Mexico. Number 2, we've heard a lot about gun violence today. And the gentleman from Texas just alluded to some of this. We have prosecutors in cities that do not prosecute crime anymore. And I'm going to give you a quick example. In Milwaukee County, in my state, here was his quote from about 15 years ago. Is it possible someone will be killed as a result of a parole or diversion that comes through my office? Absolutely. But that does not change the fact that we should be doing what we're doing to change how we go about prosecuting crime. He's accepting of it. We have prosecutors that don't prosecute crime. You wonder why people commit more crime? We had the defund the police movement. I mean, is it any surprise that that's happened? And look at what's been on all the television stations that I've seen, the cable networks over the last 24 hours, is the officer that was assassinated in Los Angeles. It is open season on law enforcement in America since the riots of 2020. I live in one of the most rural districts that you'll find in the United States. Largest community, 50,000 people. We have had 3 officers in 2023 that have been gunned down. The last one was in just across the border from the Twin Cities, and that person that came out and gunned down that sheriff's deputy was out as a result of a violent crime that they only served 4 years for. We wonder why there's violence that continues to escalate in America. And the final thing that I will say, make no doubt about it, this may be one governor in the United States of America, but there's a whole lot of elected officials around America, in particular on the other side of the aisle, that are quietly applauding this. And that's why this resolution is so important. We need to send the message that we will stand up for the Second Amendment to the Constitution, because if they could take the guns, they will. And all you have to do is look at Australia and countries like that where the exact thing has happened. That is why this resolution is important. We need to stand up for our constitutional rights every day of the year.
And I thank the gentleman from Wisconsin, and I'll wrap up, but I appreciate his sentiments. I would only just underscore your point about other leaders in this country, executive branch or legislative, who would be all too happy to go down the road that we just saw the governor of New Mexico take. And I would note that you are absolutely correct. I would say it probably tends to be my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, but no, we need to look in the mirror. There are a lot of Republicans who are all too happy to use the power of government when it affects them, and when they're able to use that power. For example, the former President of the United States issuing an award to an individual that advocated for shutting down the largest economy in the history of the world. I yield back.
Thank you very much.